Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
We don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street. There's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living room. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad.
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet. Wait a minute, I tell you. You ain't heard nothing.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore!
I'm mad as hell! I'm not going to take it anymore!
I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to
take it anymore!
I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore!
Welcome to a special Wednesday live edition of the David Pollack Show. You're like, what are you doing on Wednesday? I don't know. It's Wednesday. There's a lot to talk about because this week we had the defense rest in the Trump trial. Now, Trump's not resting. The defense is just resting. Trump can't rest until he saves America. So I thought we needed to do a special Wednesday show to talk about what happened, kind of wrap up the Michael Cohen, I don't even want to know if you want to call it testimony. Let's just call it the Michael Cohen perjury. So I thought we'd wrap that up. And then we had a fight. Oh, gosh. I'll let David tell you about what happened on the defense witness issue. And then we had the jury instructions fight. They don't want to let Trump. They don't want to let Trump's team have the jury consider intent. Which is insane, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, too. So anyway, I thought we'd catch up to speed about what happened in this Alvin Bragg business records case that the fake news media calls the hush money trial. They call it the hush money trial because they want to make you think that it's illegal to pay somebody to keep their mouths shut about something that could be embarrassing, something that the Clintons are very aware of. They've done, I think they have a whole business around hush money. And it's not illegal to pay people to shut up. We have NDAs. We have settlements all the time where you just have to keep your mouth shut and not talk about what you're settling. We even have documentation, Stormy Daniels signing herself saying no affair ever occurred between her and Donald Trump. Either way, the media and the left want to bring in what they call salacious details about things that Trump might have done or not have done to make you think differently of him, even though they tried this, guys, in 2016, the Access Hollywood tape. You remember the Access Hollywood tape about the meow? And that didn't really hurt Trump, did it? But now they want to bring that back up because why not? Let's try to throw everything at the wall, see what sticks. Let's indict Trump everywhere that anybody's willing to indict him. Let's try to tarnish this man's reputation because, of course, saving America can't happen if a Republican is in charge. So let's let Joe Biden run this thing into the ground like the old Corvette sitting in his garage filled with classified documents. So going back to New York City in this sham trial, the trial that shouldn't have been brought between the penis balloons and the porn stars and the National Enquirers and everything that's going on in this freak show of a case. We're going to talk about that tonight. Before I bring in David Gelman, a good friend of mine, Trump surrogate, excellent superstar attorney, we have to talk to Puppet Carlson here because he was supposed to be on the show. I have an intro that says featuring Puppet Carlson. Well, Puppet Carlson's not here. Hey, David. Well, instead, he's tied up. I heard he's drunk at a Waffle House. Puppet, where are you and why are you on the show, dude?
Well, I am partly drunk at a restaurant, not a Waffle House. So you are half right, but half wrong, which is not uncommon for you, David, to not have all the facts straight. But I'm glad I'm here with you. This is going to be a great show. You got some great guests tonight, Dave.
Yeah. Well, it would have been a great show, Puppet. You know, you were supposed to eat some hash browns. You're supposed to get a chocolate milk, and you were supposed to come back. And instead, here you are at a restaurant.
Well, I met a few cute waitresses. And, you know, as puppets do what they do, you know, the chicks dig the pillow and my pillow for a head. And, you know, I'm irresistible. So I just have to do what I have to do. You know what I'm saying?
Puppet, so are you letting people squeeze your My Pillows and everything?
Well, yes, I'm letting them lay their heads on my pillow, but I'm also squeezing their pillows. That's what I do.
Okay. All right, Puppet, you go back to your friends. We'll see you on the next live show.
Okay.
Thanks for joining, Puppet.
You're welcome. You know you can't do a show without me. You know you can't.
I think the show's going to be much better once you go back to your, you know. Have fun, Puppet.
Thanks, buddy. Have a great show.
All right, good night. All right, well, there's the live report from the field from our very own Puppet Carlson. This is what happens when you have a puppet as a sidekick. You never know what puppets are going to do. They're very mischievous. They go out and do puppet things. But you know what? Forget Puppet. I don't need Puppet. I got David. David!
Hey, what's up, Dave?
Welcome to the David Pollack Show, the David Gelman Show. So I wanted you to meet Puppet tonight. You'll have to meet him next time. He's a mischievous puppet. He gets himself into trouble, and this is a perfect example of what happens when you're a puppet and you go out. And I didn't even know he could drink.
I'm jealous because I love Waffle House. And in New Jersey, we don't have Waffle Houses. So, like, you know, when I went to school at the University of Arkansas, and it was like a dream come true. So every time I go back down south or anywhere that has a Waffle House, I'm there. So I'm very jealous right now.
Yeah, he has a thing. He loves Waffle Houses. We actually have a shirt that says, "I'd rather be drunk at a Waffle House with Puppet." He has a thing. He when you're a puppet, I guess you have to have your hash browns. I don't know. They don't serve alcohol at Waffle Houses, so I have no idea.
When I was in college, you know, there were ways to have that happen, but yeah, they don't.
So I don't understand how a puppet gets drunk at a Waffle. I don't even know how he eats, to be honest with you. There's a lot of questions. They're going to go unanswered tonight because I'm not putting him back on this show. That's for sure. I would have to change the rating to explicit if I let him back on. Yeah. So let's get back into another crazy thing, New York City. So you heard me set it up. I don't even want to call it a trial. I'm an attorney, so everyone's like, "Oh, David, you're an attorney. Let's have a legal analysis about what's going on in New York." And I do my best to say I refuse to even apply the law to this case because this case exists outside of the law. It's a political case, 1,000%. And for me to even pretend and give legitimacy to this case by even having an intellectual legal discussion on it does no justice to our justice system. So I've avoided even trying to be smart about it because this whole case makes no sense, right? And I'm gonna fast forward to the jury instructions, and then we're gonna go backwards. We're gonna do like a Pulp Fiction style discussion. Okay, we're gonna go to like the end and then go back to the middle.
One of my favorite movies. I love it.
It's one of the best ever, right?
Yeah. Oh God.
Did you see Reservoir Dogs, by the way?
Of course.
One of the best endings of every movie. I don't want to spoil it for all of you, but if you haven't seen Reservoir Dogs, go. Now, Quentin Tarantino does not get the David Pollack Show seal of endorsement as far as his politics are concerned. However, he makes really good movies. And back in the day where we didn't need to know the politics of the people who entertained us, I would love to go back to a day when we can go back to like not knowing the politics of the people who entertain us. I don't care what Taylor Swift's politics are. I don't care what Bud Light's politics are, even though I will never drink a Bud Light ever again, and it's not really much of a sacrifice. Their beer sucked anyway. But I just want to go back to a time where politics aren't in everything. I've said it all the time. I don't need to know what everybody's politics are all the time. But
I'm with you. For certain actors, I won't watch anymore.
Yeah.
I will never watch anything that he does. And he had some good movies back in the day, but no, I'm done with him. And, yeah, I'm with you.
Yes, and the thing is, we didn't ask him. It'd be one thing if we said, hey, De Niro. Even though we like your acting in mob movies, he does play the same character every time, by the way. Okay, he's not that gifted. He was okay in that. What's the one where they milk the cat?
The Fockers.
Yeah, Meet the Fockers. He was funny in Meet the Fockers. I'll give him that. And he played a good character in that movie. I don't know what it is, but he's like an old intern, and he goes to this factory with some young chick. Anyway, it was an okay movie. He's done a good job. But at the end of the day, nobody asked him what his opinion was, and I don't care what his opinion is. His job and everybody's job in Hollywood is to show up, look pretty, entertain us, collect their oodles and bundles of money for entertaining us, and then going back to their rich, elite lives and not act like they actually know what happens in our real world, and they don't deserve it. Actors shouldn't be able to vote. If you get $50 million, right, to pretend you're somebody else, you should give up your right to vote. I think we can pass a constitutional amendment that would allow that, because we don't even know who you really are. Who's voting? Is it a character in a movie? So we don't know.
Well, it depends on the character is. If we like them, they probably should vote. If not,
that's true. We will have to have a litmus test on whether or not they get a right to vote. But but that's they don't live in the real world. They live in this fantasy land where they get paid too much money to pretend they're somebody else, and then they tell us how we should live and not live by the same rules. I think we experience this all the time. I'm getting tangential. All I did was ask you if you've seen Pulp Fiction. I don't even know why I asked you that.
We're already off the rails.
But either way, getting right back to it. Jury instructions. And for our audience that's not a lawyer, and we don't want to bore them to death. If I wanted to bore them, I'd put Puppet back on. But for our audience, jury instructions is where you kind of tell the jury, and which, by the way, I've never understood this, and maybe you can explain this to me because you've done way more trials than me. Jury instructions, you have standard jury instructions, and at the very beginning, you can be like, hey, I'm going to prove this case, so when I give these instructions to the jury, they're going to have to say whether or not I've proved the elements of this case. I don't understand cases where the jury instructions aren't standard, such as this one, where they really have to write the jury's instructions after they've put on their case. This I can't understand, because shouldn't you agree what the jury instructions are at the beginning so you know what you have to prove or not? That I don't understand. But I'll get to that in a second. But so for my viewers watching who don't know law, after you go, it's not like Law and Order where you show up and you make a compelling argument that violates rules of evidence with dramatic music playing in the background, where you put yourself in somebody's shoes. None of that really happens, right? It's usually boring. They show up charts. Everybody wants to go home. They wonder what they should have said to get out of jury duty. That's what trials are. And then you give them these instructions, and they go sit in a room, and they go through these instructions and go, okay, did the prosecutor prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did these things, right? They give you the elements, and you have to go and look through the notes and all the other garbage, the evidence that you asked for, and say, okay, did they do these things that they're accused of on this piece of paper, the jury instructions? And that's why sometimes it's not clear. They ask for clarification, and that sometimes that goes on a little bit longer. And sometimes the jury gets hung because they can't just make a unanimous decision. Fine. I think that's what's going to happen here. But in cases like this that are just weird, you kind of create the jury instructions after the fact, and then you send it back and say, hey, have they proven what we just said they have to prove after they had the opportunity to prove it? So, jury instructions, and this is when I'm tossing it over to you. There's a big fight about jury instructions, and again, I have to do some like sort of remedial education for the viewers. Not everybody's an attorney. Criminal law requires two things: the mens rea, right? And the what is it? The actus reus, is that it or something?
Yeah, I mean we're going back to like 1L now. And,
Yeah. Well, I got the
acting.
Listen, I got the book award in my criminal procedure. I actually got my book award. Yeah. So you have to intend to do the thing that you're going to do, and then you have to do the thing, right? That's the two parts.
I mean, it's as simple as that.
You have to mean to do it and then do it, right? Yep. In order to be guilty of a crime in America, you have to mean to do it, have the intent, and then you have to actually do the thing. Okay. So in this case, they have to prove that Trump meant to not only falsify a business record, but he had to intend to do it to basically defraud somebody, to commit a felony, another crime, right? It's not just falsification. That's a misdemeanor, right? I intentionally misreported something in a book. That's not a felony in the state of New York, and it's outside the statute of limitations on this case, right?
Yep.
So that's not the crime here. The crime isn't that he said it was a legal fee and it was a hush money payment. He could have wrote to pay aliens to deliver cheeseburgers from Mars. It wouldn't have been a felony. He could have knowingly done that and giggled the whole time. I'm going to show these bastards. These are cheeseburgers from Mars. Right? He could have done that. No felony.
Right.
But if he did it to conceal a felony or something or a more serious crime, right? And usually it's things like larceny. It's usually things like I own a car rental company and you fill out an agreement saying you want the insurance. You get into a crash and I don't want to have to pay the insurance on it. So I alter the agreement and show that you never had insurance. And then when you go, hey, I paid for the insurance, you go, I don't have a record showing you paid insurance. This is coming out of your pocket, buddy. That's what this statute is made to protect. People from falsifying records to screw somebody intentionally. In this case, right? And I'm not here to entertain you, David. I'm telling them what's going on. So when you start giving all the brilliant wisdom, they're going to go, oh, I get it. All right. So the point of all of this is what they're saying Trump did was changed what this was. He directed people to not report this properly in the business record. And he did it to conceal an FEC violation, an elections violation. But here's the problem with all of it. There was no Federal Elections Commission violation. They wouldn't even consider an election violation. I'll tell you one, because payments to porn stars to not talk is an illegal election expense. So he couldn't have actually reported that. So his failure to report an expense that he wasn't allowed to actually expense isn't a crime. So let's back up. Fine. The prosecutor wants to prove that Donald Trump directed somebody to alter a business record in order to also violate a federal law, even though he wasn't charged with it. And this is what they're setting out to prove. Well, big problem is there is no underlying crime. They haven't proven it. And the person who supposedly was directed to do these things said under oath, even though oath means nothing to a convicted liar, said under oath that nobody really directed him to do it. And by the way, he was stealing from the company.
Yeah. Cherry on top.
So even though the case fell apart, and by the way, we heard from a Cohen's attorney. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. What's that? Costello. Thank you. Costello, who we heard him testify in front of Congress too. I don't have the clip. I wish I did. But Michael Cohen basically told him that he did this on his own. And of course, the judge didn't want to hear that exculpatory evidence, the evidence that has been available since before they even charged this crime. And I'm bringing everybody up to the jury instructions because now the prosecution and the judge, they don't want to allow the intent of both crimes, the underlying crime and the business records crime, to go to the jury instructions. So they don't want the jury to be able to consider whether or not Trump intended to break the law that he didn't break in order to violate the other law. Have I summed this up to the circus in which we have witnessed for the last couple of weeks?
I mean, that's a good summation right there. I got to tell you. Again, what they're trying to do is they're trying to use a civil standard rather than a criminal standard. Yeah. And a criminal standard, you have to have the intent to do something. That's the first thing. If you don't have the intent, game over. You don't even get to, second base, if you will. But they're not even, so there's no intent here. But this is the beauty of these jury instructions. And look, they are boring and they're minute. There's a bunch of minutia about it. You and I both know that stuff. But it really will hinge on these instructions. But the beauty is the prosecutors, when I say they want the jury to figure out the crime. So they're not even alleging a crime in there. So they're saying, all right, well, look, he intended to, make this fraudulent, this payment fraudulent. And then you have to back that up or, put another crime in it. They're like, okay, but that other crime, it can't be for election interference because we don't have jurisdiction for the election interference and the FEC never even wanted to deal with it in the first place. So we want you, the jury of 12 people, to tell us or to come up with a crime. This is I've never heard anything in my life. And the thing I'm scared of, this judge, how biased he is, he may buy it. He may actually buy it.
Well, and it's true. Well, of course, he wants it. Because we know, everybody who has a brain, even people who aren't lawyers, know that this trial has nothing to do with Trump. It has everything to do with keeping him off the campaign trail, digging up dirt, hopefully getting a felony conviction that would inevitably overturned, but do whatever they can to damage this man just before Fannie Willis and her bag of cash that she sleeps on, just before she's like, okay, my turn. And you see Arizona indicting Rudy Giuliani and others. I mean, what we're going to see, this is not going to stop until November, right? But it's going to keep going and going and going and going and whatever. But I don't think this hurts Trump. We know that Judge Merchan, how do you say his name? Merchan?
I just call this the judge bias.
He's not even a judge. The dude in New York, right? Whose daughter is making millions of dollars off the trial, right? The dude in New York. I'm not gagged. I can say whatever I want.
Yep.
So this is really just about embarrassing Trump, and that's his job. His job is to make sure that this hurts Trump as much as possible. So now the jury instructions, whatever, they're not going to be able to actually make them prove intent. They're going to say, jury, we've presented enough evidence to make you not like Trump. Can you find a crime? I think it's going to be a hung jury. What do you think?
Look, I mean, should it be a hung jury? No, it should be an absolute acquittal. Right. But, we're not in a normal situation here.
We're in Manhattan.
Yeah, exactly. And like all the cards are stacked against President Trump. Again, and I give the man so much credit for what he's doing and what his legal team is doing right now. There's just obstacle after obstacle that is coming after that and blocking them in this trial. And they're just plowing right through it. It is glorious to see every day. I do love it. And also I want to just put out give you a little more point though with the jury instructions, which I do think will help the president. So look, Dave, I've done a ton of jury trials as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney. And after a lot of these trials, I'm not allowed. You're not allowed to go find the jury and talk to them. Obviously, you can't because you always want to find out. Hey, like, what did you think about what I said, or this case at all? You always wonder. But every now and then, I have jurors contact me when I was a prosecutor and a defense attorney, and they just do it out of their because they want to do it. And I always ask them questions about the trial and whatnot. But one of the questions I always ask is, the jury instructions. What did you guys think? Did you guys, did you debate them or anything? And I don't think I've ever had somebody say that they really followed them. They get them with the judge, and it's in their head for a second. But once they get into that room to deliberate, game over. Like it's a free for all. So the jury instructions, it probably will be a little more in this one, but I don't care because the judge or the jury, they don't really follow it that much. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, we'll see where that one goes. All right, Pulp Fiction style. Now we're going to back up. Michael Cohen and Costello?
Robert Costello.
I don't have my notes in front of me. His testimony. What was your thoughts about? Forget Stormy. Everybody talked, whatever. She gave them a mistrial, in my opinion. I think on appeal, that was the gift that kept on giving. She shouldn't have been there to begin with. She spoke outside of the parameters of her testimony. Clearly, there was enough to at least ask for a mistrial. I think there might be enough to actually get one. But we'll see what happens on appeal. I think on appeal, they throw out this whole case because it never should have been brought because they can't actually prove the essential elements of the case. But whatever, we'll move past that. But Michael Cohen's interesting testimony. And so I want to get your take on sort of his direct and his cross-examination. Like, Michael Cohen's not an honest guy. He had no credibility to begin with. This is their star witness. What was your take after he testified?
Exactly as I thought it was going to be. It was an absolute bloodbath for Michael Cohen. I mean, look, Todd Blanche, he probably had wet dreams thinking about cross-examining him every night because I certainly would. I mean, you have a guy, he lied to Congress, he lied to judges multiple times, he's a convicted felon and a disbarred attorney. All things that you really don't, want to have as a person and an attorney. Oh, and by the way, he stole from the company that he worked for, and he recorded his boss, with the tape recorder, and never used it allegedly. I mean, this guy has never told the truth a day in his life, and he got caught up a million times by Todd during the cross-examination. And people are. I'm watching the news, obviously, and people are like, "Oh, well, his direct was really good. He was really calm and everything." Well, look, you know it. When you have a witness and you're in trial, of course you're going to prepare them for it. So I didn't think Michael Cohen was going to just be a total idiot on the stand with direct, although he really didn't help himself a lot, in my opinion. In fact, he was caught in a couple lies there too. But his cross-examination, if that is your star witness and a jury, any of those 12 jurors don't have reasonable doubt in their mind because of that, then there's no hope. There's no hope for them at all. They're not telling the truth.
Well, I mean, they should have had reasonable doubt when they were seated, because I mean, nobody can sit down and go, this seems kind of odd. The Republican front runner is being charged with this now, in addition to all these other cases. All right, well, so let's fast forward. You go to Robert Costello's testimony.
Yep.
And Judge Merchan was just pissed. Not because he was being inappropriate, because he didn't like the exculpatory things that were coming out of her mouth. Explain to the viewers exactly, kind of summarize what he said and the impact of it you think it'll have on the case.
So just to give everybody a little background, Robert Costello is a former federal prosecutor, and he is an attorney, a private attorney now. Very, very well liked, very well respected. Never had an issue a day in his life in the law. All right, so everybody knows him in New York and loves him. He testified about what Michael Cohen told him during their meetings leading up to him potentially being obtained as counsel for when Michael Cohen was going in front of Congress and when he had all these issues with the Southern District of New York. He told Robert Costello multiple times Donald Trump had no knowledge at all about these payments, that he did it on his own. All right, so he is a rebuttal witness, you call it, where he's going to rebut the testimony of Michael Cohen, impeach Michael Cohen's credibility even more, if that's even possible. And he did a great job. He was very direct on the with his questions. He was whatever Todd Blanche, or no, I'm sorry, it was Bo who did the direct examination for Costello. He answered everything well. Here's the only problem. Because these things were, what he was saying was hurting the credibility of Michael Cohen, Judge Merchan didn't really care for it. And apparently he thought that Robert Costello was copying an attitude. He said that he looked at him with side eye. Like I don't even know what the heck that even means. And that he was like huffing and puffing. And the judge, totally unprofessional, number one, what he did. He warned Robert Costello, and then after that, he told the jury to leave. And it was a closed courtroom. Only the lawyers were there, and maybe like a reporter or two. And he admonished Robert Costello repeatedly, and he told, not only did he the defense attorneys, but he also told Donald Trump he won't allow this testimony to come in if he does this again. I've never heard a judge ever do this, as long as I've ever practiced. But this is against the rules of professional conduct, what the judge did. And frankly, look, if you're a judge, you have to be above the court. You have to be above the people in the court, all right? So when it gets chaotic, you have to be chill, calm everybody down. Because if you're not, everybody in the court is going to kind of take your cue. What he did, I think, is so unprofessional. I mean, Democrat, Republican, I don't care what you are. If you see that and you hear that from a judge, you can't do that. That should have been, frankly, that is grounds for a mistrial.
Yeah. Well, and why did he do it? He wanted to make this witness look like he lacked credibility in front of the jury before dismissing him. And then, of course, the whole thing of kicking everybody out of the courtroom and all that. Listen, the jury might have not been present for that, but they heard about it. You they heard about it because their family that they go home to said, "Did you know they cleared the court? What? Seriously? Yeah, they cleared the court. I don't want to know what the news said." Well, no, I'm not telling you what the news said. I'm just telling you they cleared the court. Wow. What did that guy say? I have no idea. He knows exactly what he was doing. He knew the jury would find out. He wanted to make it look like this witness was the worst possible witness, even though the testimony he was giving basically would have been a not guilty verdict in any other trial ever in history. And as a matter of fact, the judge might have even called the attorneys over to the bench and said, "Hey, Do I have any motions you want to provide in light of this gentleman's testimony? In a normal court, he would have called a recess, called the attorneys into his chamber and said, are you really going to go to verdict after what you just heard? The prosecutors have a responsibility not to bring charges or try to get a conviction when they have evidence that maybe the person that they're accusing of committing a crime didn't actually do the thing, right? Yeah.
Well, they have to have they're ethically obligated, although there's not a lot of ethics in that office, as you're well aware.
Well, of course.
You know, and I'm sorry to cut you off, David. Here's the other thing I saw. You know, when there was direct examination of all the prosecutor's witnesses, did you ever notice that the objections from Trump's attorneys were, they were overruled pretty much 50% of the time, 55% of the time. But when there was an objection by the prosecutor, that was sustained, meaning, the judge always sustained it. And then when it was the direct examination of Robert Cohen and his time for the defense team, every objection from the prosecutor was sustained.
Yeah.
Every one of them. It boggled my mind. I mean, it just showed how biased this judge is. And look, in trial, you really don't want to object too much. It just doesn't look good to the jury. I mean, they're doing it 99% of the time and getting favorable rulings. It doesn't make any sense. The jury has to see that.
Well, yeah, especially when you're the prosecutor, you want to keep objecting because it makes the jury be like, well, why don't you want him to say what he's about to say? What are you objecting to? It makes them suspicious. When the defense objects, yes, you're right. It's like, oh, what? You don't want him to say? Juries are funny. Like they don't want to actually listen to what you're telling them. They want to look between the lines and figure out what you're not telling them. Especially when you make it a mystery, like, ooh.
It is true.
What are you talking about at the bench that I can't hear? It's like you haven't paid attention for 6 hours, and all of a sudden you care about them arguing about what evidence they're allowed to admit. Anyway, right. But yeah, there was one, and I can't remember exactly what the question was. It was something about asking Cohen about something he lied about. And it was this
one. It was
yeah, but there was so many. But there was one in particular. He was like, he asked him, was like, did you? It might have been didn't you say you were gonna? I forget what it was, but it was a ridiculous objection. Then he asked a question. They allowed it a second. Anyway, whatever. The whole thing has been ridiculous, right? All right. So now we've went from Cohen to Costello. Now Trump chose not to take the stand. Yep. What's your opinion on that?
I think that was a great move. Look. I don't know if President Trump really I'm sure he wanted to take the stand because look, he knows what he's doing, all right, and he wants to tell the truth. He wants to get the truth out. The problem is if you do that, then you open yourself up to cross-examination, and you know what the prosecutors are going to do. They're going to they're going to steal.
Well, we're not on the radio. You can say whatever you want.
Great.
And it's after 8 o'clock. You're good.
Yeah, all the kids are in bed. Yeah. They're going to steamroll him. They're going to try to embarrass him, even more. And they're going to just bring out exculpatory evidence that has nothing to do with this. I don't know, Stormy Daniels talking about ghosts. So it was a good move that he did not testify. And look, he really didn't have to testify because they never touched him. Nobody put him in the actual position of writing a check and saying, hey, yeah, this is for a payoff or whatever to stop the election or to not interfere with my life. So they never even put any gloves on him. So yeah, if I was his attorney, there's no way I would have said, hey, yeah, you got to testify. And Todd Blanche, I don't think it was probably a hard conversation for him. I'm sure Todd Blanche said, hey, Mr. President, I don't recommend that you testify. And I'm sure President Trump said, all right, you know what? I haven't heard anything negative or anything that's going to hurt me, so I'm not.
He probably like, it's cold in here. I don't want to stay here any longer than I have to. But I agree with you. I mean, they didn't even really have to put on the defense because they should have honestly they could have moved for another mistrial after the end of the prosecution's case because they didn't prove or at least dismiss. They haven't proved the essential elements of their case even after their case in chief. They didn't even have to put on a defense, in my opinion.
I agree with you. And look, in normal cases, I wouldn't. But again, we're not talking about a normal case. And if you have Costello, who is a very reputable guy, reputable attorney, if you feel confident that he's going to be able to testify right, and I thought he did a great job, I'd say, yeah, put him on. But normally, I'm with you. I just wouldn't even present a case, ask for a directed verdict, and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah. Well, all right. So now closing arguments are next week. And I'm sure they're not going to be as exciting as people are expecting them to be. And it doesn't even matter because now, of course, the jury's going to have their instructions and they're going to allowed to make their closing arguments to fit their arguments into the instructions. Fine. How long do you think the jury deliberates for? How long do you think this goes? When do you think we have a verdict or a hung jury in this case?
Or
maybe an acquittal. If we had an acquittal, honestly, it would shock me because I don't see how you're going to get a Manhattan jury to acquit President Trump. If Trump gets an acquittal, and I'll just say this right now, every single one of these cases after this, every single one of those prosecutors is probably going to have to think twice. If you're able to get an acquittal in New York City with this judge and this jury, every single case after this, they go, whoo, wait a second, because a not guilty verdict in New York City leading up to the election, you can't give him a better. I mean, he doesn't need a fundraise for the rest of the newspapers. Not guilty and a picture of Trump. It'll be over. Any subsequent trial against President Trump after a not guilty verdict will look like double jeopardy, even though it's a totally different case. I don't think we're going to get that, but oh my gosh, it would be like winning the political lottery. But what do you think is going to happen, and how long do you think it'll take for whatever's going to happen?
Well, look, I agree with you. It should be an acquittal. I mean, anybody who is in that courtroom, you have to, if you're being true to yourself, you're going to say there's reasonable doubt. And reasonable doubt is a very high standard, as you're well aware. So if there's an inkling that you don't think President Trump knew or did this, you have to acquit him. So, again, normally I'd be like, yeah, acquittal. I think it's going to be a hung jury as well. I think there's going to be multiple jurors in there who are probably going to agree that, look, there is reasonable doubt. But I don't think they're going to be able to convince every single one of those 12 because we are in Manhattan. Now, how long do I think it's going to take? I think it's going to probably take a little while so Tuesday they come back, which is another terrible decision by the judge. They should have been able to go. This should have gone to the jury today, tomorrow, very later.
This is a 3-day weekend. They're going to forget everything they were told.
Yeah, well, 6 days.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, but with that being said, Tuesday they'll do their closing argument. So I'd say you got to give about 45 minutes to an hour for each closing argument. It might be a little less, but I always like to think more. And then the jury instructions. Jury instructions are going to take about an hour probably for that judge to read everybody. So you got all morning if you think about it. It'll go to the jury, I'd say, early afternoon. That's Tuesday. Now, here's a crazy thing. Is the judge going to call for the trial to continue on Wednesday or for them to continue to deliberate? Because every Wednesday he's giving everybody off, which is, again, totally mind-blowing. But whatever. So if he's doing it the right way, which he hasn't done yet, but let's just say we're in a different universe and he does it the right way this time. So they got Tuesday. I think they have Wednesday. I think they would still deliberate on Wednesday. And remember, the jury, they're probably going to have questions because they're probably going to be kind of deadlocked on a couple of things. So they'll have to come back out to the judge. The judge they'll ask questions. The prosecutors and the defense attorneys are going to be able to talk about it as well, weigh in, if you will. And then they'll have to go back to deliberate. I would anticipate having a verdict by the end of next week.
No. Yeah. One way or the other. Or not a verdict.
Some type of decision, I think. I think it'll be a hung jury. Yeah. Again, it should be a not guilty, but I think it's going to be a hung jury.
Now, let me ask you two more scenarios. One scenario is a hung jury. Do you think Alvin Bragg will retry the case just to keep him tied up till November? If that's the purpose of all of this, why not, right?
I mean, you never know, but remember, though, let's just say it's a hung jury and Alvin Bragg says, all right, I'm going to retry it. He's not going to retry it right now. He can't. So they're going to have time to do it. You can't. Literally, you cannot do it immediately. So
you're not supposed to be able to.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of things that I don't take into consideration, like the politics involved in this. There cannot be a way that they try this case. I mean, everybody in their right mind and their mom will be going to the hills with pitchforks if that case is tried again. And the investigations that are going to have to be involved with the office of DA Bragg and the White House, and if there's any corresponding, that will blow this all up. So
now, last hypothetical, what happens if he's found guilty?
Appeal. You're going to have an interlocutory appeal immediately. I mean, and frankly, it'll get reversed. It'll get dismissed or remanded back probably in a very, very quick time, in my opinion, because there's so many issues. Like, frankly, I have at least 10 issues that I just know off the top of my head that are appealable that they would win, just on appeal alone. And that's just 10 of them. And I'm sure there's probably a good 50 to 100. So that would be thrown away, and it'd be appealed automatically. And look, this judge, they're probably going to ask for an automatic appeal, the interlocutory, and he's probably going to deny it. So then they're going to have to go to the appellate division and do it again like that, do it the slow way, if you will. But I got to tell you, there is no way this stands up. Not a single ounce of my body believes it would stand up, even in New York.
But now, does it matter? Because that's the final question, is if he gets a guilty plea, even while he's appealing it, even if it comes back quickly, the media will say he's been convicted of a felony, 32 felonies.
Yep.
Even if it comes back on an appeal, they'll still say, well, initially he was convicted. So they will call him an initially convicted felon. I promise you they'll do this. You heard it first here on this show. If Trump is initially convicted and then it goes to appeals, and even if it gets sent back to the courts, reversed, thrown out, whatever, they'll call him an initially convicted felon. They will develop a whole new category of convictions, even if it doesn't stand. I think that's all they need. They just need the guilty verdict so they can put it on their paper, so they can tell everybody he was found guilty. Even if it's appealed, they'll say, well, media, fake news, it was appealed, and now he's not guilty. But he was guilty. That's what they're going to say. I promise you.
100%. They just want to see that G, that guilty. That's all they want to see. But look, it doesn't matter. We all know the mainstream media, let's just say President Trump's acquitted, okay? The mainstream media is going to then just say, oh, well, you know what? The jury was biased towards President Trump then. I mean, they're going to have a totally different narrative because they can't comprehend that what is happening right now is completely wrong because they are part of it. They are really the one of the cogs in this whole wheel of trying to stop President Trump. So I don't think one way or another it would help. It's going to help. But, here's the beauty of it. They thought that this was going to hurt him. All right. Look at the polls. Look at the polls. He's up everywhere. He is up in every swing state, and not like by 1 or 2, but it's like 5 or 6. And a lot of the polling is based on this trial. People are seeing that this is not fair. This is a prosecution that should have never been brought because this is a DOJ that is being weaponized. So you know what? It's helping him, in my opinion. And everybody's opinion, it seems like.
No, I think that's clear. And I think when you start to see all the other chips fall, whether it be in the federal cases in D.C. and in Florida or even in Georgia, I think everything's starting to unravel pretty quickly here. And I think what happens here next week will really set the stage for what happens now through November. It's definitely something to stay tuned to, and people should certainly, anytime you're on TV talking about this, people should follow you to watch it because your insight's fantastic. We appreciate you being on this show, and we're going to keep having you back to keep talking about this as it goes because even after this thing concludes, we're going to be talking about this still. We got Giuliani's now facing felonies in 2 different states. America's mayor, the guy who defended this country essentially after 9/11 in New York. Everybody loved him until he supported Trump. So we have lots to talk about. I really look forward to continuing these conversations, and thank you so much for the insight tonight.
My pleasure, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for being on. We'll see you again soon.
Be good.
All right, guys. That is all the time I have for you tonight. I hope you enjoyed the breakdown of everything so far. Look, the information's going to keep coming. You're going to keep hearing everything coming out. Next week is going to be really interesting. The closing arguments, jury instructions, deliberations, the questions they're asking. I mean, I know I'm going to be glued to the news feeds next week, and hopefully you'll be too. We'll bring you as much information as we can. We'll bring you all the experts to kind of unpack everything. So we're going to keep bringing you the information from the ground because I know you want to hear it. And we're going to be cruising to November. No matter what, guys, you heard what David said, and I agree with him. It only helps Trump in the polls. I think at the end of the day, Trump's getting reelected in November. We have to wait and see what's going to happen between Election Day and Inauguration Day. That is, I think, what they're setting up to pull some funny business. So we all have to stay very aware of everything that's going on. And you can keep it locked right here to the David Pollack Show, and we'll bring you all of it. As always, thanks for watching to this special Wednesday edition. We will see you Monday, 8 p.m. We're going to be talking about Iran and the situation over there with the change of power after the death of their president. We'll be talking about the United Nations, moments of silence, and the United States senators issuing condolences for a man who's murdered so many people in Iran. So we're going to talk about that on Monday. So we look forward to seeing you on Memorial Day. You guys have a great night. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Good night, everybody.